Hello to you all and welcome to Improvate's first international conference. Improvate is a platform for connecting governments and innovation companies. Improvate's mission is to connect change makers in technology with leaders in governing positions. Improvate is dedicated to find solutions and sparking collaborations that will improve the quality of life for the many. Here with us, Improvate's founder and chairman, Irina Nevzlin. Our special guest today, the Right Honourable Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the founder and chairman of the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Also with us today are honourable ministers from Israel and Africa, Mr. Yizhar Shai, Minister of Science and Technology from Israel, Mr. Joseph Antoine Kasonga Mukata, Minister of Agriculture, Democratic Republic of Congo. Also with us, Omari Tewebe Gumba, Deputy Minister of Agriculture, Tanzania, Minister Ato Sani Reddy, Minister of Natural Resources Management and Food Security in Ethiopia, Professor Edie Boga, Secretary of the State Department for Crop Development and Agriculture Research, Kenya, Minister Jubalani Mabuza, Minister of Agriculture, Eswatini, Mr. Jonathan Bialosuka Wata, the Minister of Fisheries and Livestock in Congo, Mr. Masima, he is the Ambassador of Tanzania in Israel, and Mrs. Coringanor, Head of Structures and Export Finance at Bank Discount. We will hear today from Israel leading agrotech and innovation companies. They will present solutions here in the studio in the field of food security. Food security has become a burning issue, especially today because of the pandemic. That is why we choose to deal with this issue today. So here at the studio or via Zoom, Netafim, NextFirm, LR Group, ICL, Alphabet Planners, AgroScout, Bioefficiency, Milky, Bermad, and finance company that can help those wonderful tech companies to do business in Africa. Discount Bank, Ashra, East Africa International Finance Corporation, and African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank. Also watching us, representative of investment fund from around the world that are looking for investment in Israel innovation companies. This conference will be the first in a series of international conference held by Improvate to connect between governments and innovation companies. So, let's start. I would like to introduce Irina Nevzlin, the founder and the chair of Improvate. Irina is Israeli entrepreneur. She grew up and started her career in Moscow, continued in London, and now lives in Israel. She's the author of the book, The Impact of Identity, The Power of Knowing Who You Are. Over the last decade, she's a chair of the board in the Museum of the Jewish People. She conducted a $100 million transformation. It is now the biggest Jewish museum in the world, telling the story of unity and success. So, Mrs. Nevzlin, what is the vision behind Improvate?
First, Danny, thank you very much for the question. And I have to tell something. I'm very excited. I'm grateful to everybody who is watching us and who is with us in the studio. It's our first inaugural conference, and we did it at the time when it's hard to imagine it's possible. And it's possible because there is some nice woman looking to me from control room, Ronit Hassin-Hochman, who is my partner and the CEO of the company who made it happen. Now, back to your question. You see, I think we all know that there is a crisis in leadership around the world. We see it everywhere, not just in crisis. It started before. Another problem is that for leaders to lead now, it became much more complicated because the world became so much more complicated. And so in order to lead in times like that, you really need to be able to do the teamwork and to bring different brains together. And what I see is that over the last decade, 2 decades, we really have 2 leadership groups. One is elected politicians, and the other one is tech companies, which are growing in their impact on life of everybody. Now, those two groups are ought to talk together to build a shared language, and this is where we come into place. We want to make sure that these groups come and work to make life better for all of us and for many.
So, Mrs. Nevslin, how can Improvate help the world in those problematic days?
I'm glad you asked. Look, I think a lot of people who are here with us today get invitations to a lot of different gatherings. Now it's mostly online, but it used to be physical, where you have these discussions, which are basically two topics. One topic is issues and hand problems that we have, and the second one is who are we going to blame today for those problems? Now, while I think it's very important to know what problems we have and how we got to that, I also feel that there's a big group of people around the world who want to have another discussion. And the discussion is, okay, we have a problem. There's a theoretical reason why we got to where we got. But what we want to do is come together and find the solutions that will actually make our life better and everybody's lives better. So this is, I think, what Improvate ought to do, especially in the time of crisis.
So that's what we're going to do in the next hours. Thank you, Mrs. Nevslin, for staying with us. And now to London. Hello, Mr. Tony Blair. It is a great honor to have you with us today. Today's meeting focuses on the subject that I know, very close to your heart, food security. Being active in Africa, how do you see the food security challenge in the continent, especially when the COVID pandemic makes a big problem in access to food?
Yeah, first of all, a big congratulations to everyone at Improvate, to Irina and her team for making this get together happening. It's actually a huge tribute to their skill and ingenuity that they've managed to get so many people together on what I think is going to be a really important method of connecting people for the betterment of people in Africa. So food security is, of course, a huge challenge. And it was a challenge before COVID. COVID has deepened that challenge. But there's one other thing that the COVID-19 crisis has done, and that is that any problem that was there before COVID is there now, but accelerated. And the same is true also of the thinking behind the solutions to these problems. So in all the conversations, my institute works in around 15 different African countries with teams of people, and we're about to go into several more, including some of the countries represented on this call. What we find is there's now an enormous interest in the whole question of technology and what it can do to accelerate Africa's development and accelerate the solutions to these long-standing problems. Now, on food security, it's very, very clear. There are still large numbers of people in Africa that go hungry. Africa, just to give you some data points, it imports around $80 billion worth of agricultural produce. It exports 40 billion. So it has a deficit when it should have a huge surplus. The tariffs between African countries on the export of goods between those African countries are high, on average 12%. That means sometimes you have a situation where, for example, in South Africa, it could be actually more, it could be cheaper to import from Argentina than from an African country next door. And then thirdly, you've got a situation where the population of Africa is going to double in the next 30 years. So it's going to go from roughly 1.2 billion people to over 2 billion people. And at the same time, the numbers of people going to the cities is increasing. So this food security question has always been acute. It's even more acute now. And there is literally no way of dealing with this unless there's agricultural transformation in Africa. And that is to do with logistics and infrastructure and food production and scale. But technology has a role to play in each and every one of the issues that affect African agriculture.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blair. We will be talking with you later again. Thank you very much. Now, here in the studio, the Minister Yizhar Shai, or we'll talk about something else now. Minister of Science, that is the right thing. In Israel, Yizhar Shai, Israel is considered an innovation nation. As a minister who only recently entered your position, what are your plans to expose the world to Israeli technology?
Thank you, Danny, and thank you for having me here, Rena and Danny. It's a great honor to be here. Israel is considered as one of the leading hubs of innovation around the world. We are building innovation in various areas of technology and science. And as we are building those areas, we are also always looking forward into what happens next. What are the trends that build the next exciting companies, the next exciting areas for exploration of scientists, technologists, people who build companies, people who build the research within universities. As we look into what happens in the near future, we are looking into the potential of artificial intelligence as one of the most significant worldwide trends, which has a practical implication in almost every aspect of our day-to-day lives. As this applies to our discussion here, AI, artificial intelligence, is very applicable towards the areas of agriculture, of precision agriculture, which is an up-and-coming market trend by itself, and is a basis for cooperation between Israel and, I hope, many nations in Africa, and by the way, around the world as well.
So can you say a word about Israel's startup companies and food security in Africa?
So, as a minister, I'm not allowed to mention names, so I will talk to the market names. Segment. We do see Africa rising over the last decade as a potential market for Israeli companies. Traditionally, Israeli companies, even in the area of agriculture, were focused more on South America, North America, and some areas in the East. Now Africa has become a good trade partner for Israeli companies, for innovation companies that deal with the various aspects of food security. And again, you see companies developing technologies in the area of water technologies. You see companies developing in the areas of food improvements, yield, again, using AI for precision agriculture in order to improve the quality of crops, the quality of agricultural product around many sectors of that market. And we believe that this will also be the basis for much more to come, as the world is now realizing the importance of food technologies, of food security, and agriculture as a whole. I grew up in the Israeli high tech in the 90s. You would not talk about agriculture in the sense of innovation then. Nevertheless, we are 30 years later, which speaks to my age. And now we are talking agriculture as innovation, as an important aspect of the Israeli tech nation, startup nation, and innovation overall.
And as Mr. Blair said, the people of Africa will be double themselves in 30 years. So for over 3 decades, LR Group has been operating worldwide in development, financing, construction, and management of large-scale projects, enabled to make the most from the land, natural resources. With us today here in the studio is Ami Lustig, CEO of LR Group. Ami, please.
Thank you, Danny. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ami. I was born myself about 65 years ago, if nobody hears it, in a moshav in the Valley of Israel. My parents were newcomers to Israel, and I got raised under the conviction that if you get a good piece of land, technology, and a market, you can make a living, a fair living, of being a farmer. We call it a middle-class farmer. This vision was taken to Africa. Our largest project in Africa, out of 100 projects we did in the continent, is in Angola. It's called Aldea Nova, the new villages, whereby we constructed 15 villages based on the Israeli model of the moshav, whereby we are trying to provide the farmers with technology, access to markets, and inputs that will enable them to reach an income of around $1,000 per family per month, which is, to my opinion, the minimum level above which you become a middle-class farmer. LR Group is an integration company. We integrate technologies in rural development. We are working in agriculture, water, energy, health. What we do is actually, we try to think before we do, is we provide the feasibility study. It's very easy to make mistakes, especially in agriculture, if you select the wrong products and the wrong technology. So we do a feasibility study. Then we try to raise the financial facilitation for the project. This is a very challenging task since investing money in agriculture is not trivial. I will speak about some examples, but we are working with Israeli Ashra, which is the Israel ECA, Export Credit Agency, and we are using their help to finance projects all over the world. Once we secure the financing for the project, we are getting ahead with the construction, and then even more important is the operation. One thing we have to remember is that the operation, post-construction operation risk in agriculture is very high. Cows, they get diseases. Flocks, they are influenced by weather. So we have to keep supporting our project along the way. We have a history of supporting our projects for over 20 years. We become partners and we operate the projects. So the idea is to bring technologies from Israel to the world in all aspects. As you may very well know, and as it was mentioned here, Israel has a lot of technologies to offer in agriculture. Actually, last time we counted, there are 400 high-tech companies in Israel, all related to agriculture. We consider our task to take these technologies and integrate them into working projects. I'll give a few examples about this. We are working with all world's recognized banks and off-takers. For example, in Papua New Guinea, we are operating with ExxonMobil, where we are trying to provide the world's largest coffee plantation supported by ExxonMobil, and some other examples I can give you later on. We are spread all over the world. If I look at our impact records, we are speaking about $2.5 billion of agricultural projects on the ground, more than 100 projects. We triple the yield, and we are trying to 4 times increase the income per farmer. This is a project we are doing in Congo DRC. We are trying to provide the necessary fresh food to Kinshasa, the capital of DRC. This is a project, again, we're doing in the Congo DRC in Lukalenge, which is in the middle of the country where fresh food is almost not available. We are working there. The villages in Africa and in Angola and in Congo DRC and in Congo Brazzaville, which are providing livelihood for 5,000 farmers. If we don't build villages, we are trying to build agro-industrial centers, which are providing the neighboring farmers with technology and inputs and processing their products. I will show you a film now that was taken in Papua New Guinea. This is an integrated dairy farm. Please go ahead.
Ilamo Dairy is Papua New Guinea's first commercial dairy. The state-of-the-art farm is a partnership between the Central Province Government, Innovative Agro-Industry PNG, and the state. It represents a US $40 million investment in the development of a local dairy industry. Innovative Agro-Industry has a strong culture of delivery in PNG. With production underway 14 months after groundbreaking, the ambitious Grass to Glass project represents an important first step in curbing the high cost of fresh milk and other dairy imports to PNG. In the future, as more dairy farms are developed, the nutritional benefits of dairy products will become even more widely accessible to all Papua New Guineans. prior to the arrival of Ilimo Dairy, all milk was imported, costing tens of millions in foreign exchange annually. A strong local dairy industry will reduce this burden on foreign exchange over time. Ilimo Dairy Farm has succeeded in providing the PNG consumer world-class quality milk and at the same time reducing the price of 1 litre of fresh milk by a 50% price slash. Our herd now numbers over 700 Holstein Friesians, of which 500 were originally imported from New Zealand. The cows are monitored using high-tech, state-of-the-art technology to best manage herd health and calving cycles. 110 hectares of stock feed is grown on-site, and all feed is processed on-site. Our cows are fed the best feed and watered with human-grade drinking water drawn from a nearby river and treated on-site. The dairy farm practices ethically, environmentally friendly farming, adhering to industry's best practices that include waste management systems that turn cow waste to fertilizers used in our cropping, and an on-site solar farm to increase operating and environmental efficiencies. Ilimo Dairy has created 200 new jobs and outgrower opportunities for local farmers. Farmers grow maize for cow feed with seeds, other inputs and training support provided by the dairy. The long-term goal is to transition local outgrowers from subsistence farming to cash cropping, creating an holistic environment of food security and economic benefits.
By providing this program to the subsistence farmers, they're taking on board a new economic activity where they are going to be earning money directly.
World-class processing, packaging and distribution facilities that adhere to industry's best practices on quality and food safety are also on site, adding the final element to the grass-to-glass model that delivers affordable fresh milk to Papua New Guineans. Ilimo milk has been overwhelmingly well received by the PNG consumer, with demand skyrocketing. It is, after all, real milk, real local.
So quite impressive, I think. We continue to hold 50% of this dairy farm and dairy processing operation, and we are intending to hold it for a very long time, supporting the people of Papua New Guinea and providing them additional agro-industrial operations. The last thing I want to mention, one of the last things I want to mention is the cacao opportunity. We had used Israeli technology, fertigation, and precise agriculture to increase the yield of cacao plantations from 0.5 ton per hectare to 3 tons. It's 6 times. More than that, we have initiated a technology that will utilize more than almost 30% of the cacao pod instead of the 10% utilized by the current technologies. We are producing beans and pulp and gluten-free flour from the cacao pods, and thus, with the increase of yield, can provide additional income per farmers. What we do is we open an agro-industrial center for cacao in the middle of existing plantations. We can pay the farmers more for the pods because we utilize 3 times the yield of the cacao. While doing it, we are providing them with drip irrigation and fertigation technologies to increase their own yield. We have this project in Ecuador and Nicaragua, and we are now embarking a few projects in Africa under the same technology. This is the initiation we are doing with ExxonMobil, which is going to be the biggest coffee plantation in Papua New Guinea, providing work for almost 12,000 people, whereby each farmer is getting 1 hectare of land and 1,500 seedlings to plant of coffee. We will offtake the coffee from the farmer and process it and market it around the world. That shows you the methodology under which we are alleviating the farmers' way of living. The last project we have is in the Philippines. I wanted to show you. It's using Israeli technology to irrigate the rice fields. As you may very well know, rice fields can yield 2 times a year. The problem is that with the global warming, we don't have enough water in the dry season. We've implemented solar panels and accurate agriculture and fertigation. We are going to provide in over 6,400 locations that will irrigate and flood the rice fields during the dry season. In the dry season, you have sun. The sun will be used to take water from the river and flood the fields, and that's a perfect solution to double the yield. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
That's it from Improvate Food Security in Africa. We have heard today about the needs of Kenya and Ghana, Ethiopia, Congo, and Tanzania in the field of food security. We received an overview of the continent from Honorable Tony Blair with us here in Israel, Ministers of Agriculture and Science and Technologies. We were exposed to leading Israeli agri-tech companies that can help the problems of food security. Improvate's next conference will be on the topic of upgrading agriculture through smart agricultural technologies in Eastern Europe, and will take place in October 29th, 2020, chaired by the former Bulgarian President Rosen Plevneliev and agriculture ministers from Eastern Europe. Thank you all. Let's hope for better days for everybody, health for everybody. Thank you.